I've been beyond excited to dive into Little Nightmares 3, and the day has finally come where I get to do that. I got in a day early. Thank you, Bandai Namco, for sending me the code for the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Little Nightmares 3, and I am so happy to be back. I played the demo for this game, and I absolutely loved it. With the full release being here, I wanted to see what improvements had been made to this game since the time of the demo, because there were some issues that I noticed in that particular demo. So the story of this game follows two characters, Lo and Alone, as they venture through the nowhere, a world of twisting childhood nightmares that these two have to work together to overcome. And the game can be played single player or multiplayer, but it is worth noting that if you play this game online multiplayer with someone else, that particular save file can only be accessed with that other person. You can't continue it by yourself, so just make note of that before you hop into a multiplayer session. Now, like I said, I played the demo for this game and I absolutely fell in love with it. It was my first experience with Little Nightmares. I'd never played any of the previous ones before, which is crazy because Halloween is my favorite holiday. It's my favorite time of year. I love horror movies. I love horror games. So Little Nightmares should have been something that I hopped onto, but I just never got around to it. So the demo for Little Nightmares 3 immediately hooked me and made this a game that I absolutely wanted to play. The game has an overall spooky theming. While not being over the top where someone would be so scared that they couldn't play it, it's mainly the tone and the aesthetic of the game that feels so spooky. The game starts you off right where the demo did, so I ran through this section of the game pretty quickly as I had already played it. And being that I am playing this game single player, that means I have to rely on my AI companion to help solve puzzles. One thing I mentioned when I reviewed the demo of this particular game was that it felt like the AI companion was pretty smart in this game. In a lot of other games, when you have AI companions, it kind of feels like they take forever to get around to what they're actually supposed to be doing. But in Little Nightmares 3, it felt like this companion was always indicating at what the solution to the puzzle was going to be, or it was taking charge as to just doing things I needed them to do before I hit the button to actually prompt them to solve the puzzle. So this was really nice. However, there were a couple instances while playing the demo that this AI companion did have a bit of that slow down, like kind of no brain attitude that a lot of other AI companions have in other games. However, when I played the full release today, I will say that it feels like a lot of these instances where this issue presented itself in the demo were no longer present, but that the AI companion had actually been updated a little bit and was performing even better than it did in the demo. Not saying that the demo was bad, I'm just noticing less of those delays that I noticed in the demo in the full release, which is a nice thing. Now, getting through the first zone in the game that you played through in the demo was really exciting. And the reason for that is because I think most of the fun of Little Nightmares is seeing the new scenery and locations that the game sends you to and finding more puzzles. And the puzzles in this game never feel super challenging, allowing you to solve them relatively quickly and continuing on, which means you get to see more and more of the scenery, which I think is done so well in this game. And I'll definitely say that there is some trial and error once you get a little bit farther into the game and you start seeing some more enemy types. And the reason I say that is because a lot of these enemies, unless you're like absolutely locked on to what the solution to the scenario you're in is, you'll likely have to die a couple times before you find that solution. However, this to me never felt all that frustrating due to how fast the respawn time is in this game. Like, I encountered this one enemy and I couldn't quite figure out which way the enemy was going to be moving, and I constantly kept getting spotted by them and then getting picked up and dying and having to reset. However, the load times practically don't exist in this game. There's hardly any load time at all in this game, which is fantastic. I mean, I hardly had time to pick up my phone and look at what time it was before I was already loaded back into the game. Now, like I said earlier, this game isn't over the top scary. The game isn't going to have you jumping out of your chair or shutting your eyes out of fear, but the scenery and locations you visit have just enough of a creepy vibe, which as a huge fan of horror games and Halloween, I personally love. And that's not to say that nothing in this game is scary. Some enemies farther in definitely are a bit creepier than others, and some even provide some more tense moments of gameplay, which I really enjoyed that little change up in gameplay pacing. Now, like I said, one of the big things that I wanted to check out when I got into the full release of this game was to see if there were any significant graphical improvements or frame rate improvements from what I played in the demo. And I did a lot of testing on this because I found some interesting things. So immediately when I was playing on my monitor at my desk, I noticed that there were minimal changes while docked with the frame rate and the graphics. The game still played smoothly, but there were some occasional noticeable frame hiccups, and these were not game-breaking by any stretch of the imagination, nor did they ruin my experience with the game, but I was a bit disappointed to see that this had not been ironed out prior to the full launch. However, upon further testing, I realized this may not be specifically due to not ironing out issues with the game, but could be related to the actual hardware I'm playing the game on. So to test this further, I actually took the Switch 2 out to my living room where I have my mini dock set up. So that way I could test the game on a TV with 4K resolution as well as 120Hz refresh rate. And the reason I wanted to do this is because at my desk with my setup, I actually have an Elgato HD 60S, which means that my capturing footage is capped at 180p as well as 60Hz rather than the 120Hz. So the refresh rate is quite a bit lower. And what I noticed when I did plug the game into my TV with that higher refresh rate, I noticed the game immediately appeared to run smoother on this particular TV, and I was noticing far less frame related hiccups. So all of this could be related to having a monitor with a lower refresh rate that's causing those frame issues versus a TV with a higher, or a monitor even with a higher refresh rate. I wasn't experiencing any of those frame issues. Now, I also wanted to check out the game in handheld play to see how that performed relative to the Elgato in my 4K TV. So I undocked my Switch 2 and I was immediately blown away by the results of this little test. There is a huge difference in performance. It was honestly night and day. In handheld mode, this game not only looks better graphically in my opinion than it did while it was in my 1080p monitor with the Elgato, but it also runs much more consistently frame rate wise. I never noticed any frame dips while playing this game handheld, and I was really not anticipating such a stark contrast between the two play modes. So it's definitely worth noting that it seems like any monitor or some sort of display with a lower refresh rate is having more of those hiccups. Now, Bandai Namco was also kind enough to send me the code for a digital deluxe version of this particular game. And this was really nice because it provided me with a handful of cool cosmetics for both characters, as well as the passes for the DLC content that is planned for April and June of next year, which has me very excited as someone who already loves this game. I know that more content is on the way and I can't wait to experience even more Little Nightmares. So my final thoughts on Little Nightmares 3 on the Nintendo Switch 2 are that I am loving this game. I am absolutely over the moon happy with how this game is looking and running, obviously dependent on the display that I'm playing the game on. As a Halloween fan and a horror fan in general, Little Nightmares 3 and its many locations, enemies, and theming hit all the right chords for me personally, and I can't wait to continue playing this game. The graphics look fantastic in handheld and on my 4K TV with 120Hz, but like I said earlier, I did notice issues on lower refresh rate monitors, so be aware of that before making this purchase. However, I do want to really hammer home that despite that having a couple more hiccups here and there on the lower refresh rate monitor, the game was still an incredibly smooth and fun experience. The frame dips were very infrequent. They were noticeable, but again, they were so infrequent and they were so quick and they passed so quickly that it didn't hinder the experience at all while I was playing on that lower refresh rate monitor. So don't feel like just because you pick up this game and you have a lower refresh rate display that this is going to be an unplayable experience. That is not the case at all. All of the gameplay footage that you're seeing on screen was captured on that lower refresh rate screen. So the game is still running incredibly well, but it is worth noting that there is some improvements on those higher fidelity monitors and displays. Now, on top of not just being excited to continue playing this Little Nightmares game, this game also has me excited to go back and play the older Little Nightmares games. Like I said, I had never played any of the other games in the series prior to this one, and with the fact that Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition is actually coming out the same day as Little Nightmares 3 today, that is really exciting to me to hop in and be able to play the original game with those higher fidelity graphics. That's super exciting. So I'm really looking forward to going back and playing some earlier entries in the series. I don't believe at this time they've announced an enhanced edition for Little Nightmares 2, so that's a little bit disappointing, but I am still looking forward to playing the original with the enhanced edition and maybe picking up Little Nightmares 2 on sale, because I'm sure a Halloween sale will be rolling around here soon. All in all, if you're into spooky season, you like horror as a genre in general, and you just vibe with Halloween and spooky stuff, this game is a no-brainer pickup. It is definitely worth having on your radar and adding to your library. But that is going to be it for my review of Little Nightmares 3. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Little Nightmares 3 on the Nintendo Switch 2. If this is something that you're planning to pick up on Switch 2, pick up somewhere else, let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Like I said, that's it. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. It helps me out, helps the video out, and helps the channel out immensely. But until next time, peace.